typical Magnolia Now workflow goes something like this. The marketing department needs a new component for their site, and they need it fast. They give the task to the development team. Not a problem for the developers, as they are using Magnolia Now together with Magnolia's Light development. The developer validates the implementation in the integration test environment. With just a single click of a button, he can install it to user acceptance testing with a recent copy of the production data and notify his marketing colleague to try it out. While entering content and testing it in the user acceptance testing environment, marketing can pinpoint any changes they need and give feedback to the developer. This illustrates one of the outstanding strengths of Magnolia Now. It makes it incredibly fast and easy for marketing and developer teams to collaborate. Marketers and developers can track and eliminate issues in the page template in rapid iteration. Once the marketer approves it, they both have time to go and get a coffee, while waiting for the editors to enter content. Once all content is in, it can effectively go live, anytime, anywhere, even using a tablet or mobile phone. Just like messaging apps get rid of intermediate email-based communication, Magnolia Now lets developers and marketers collaborate faster and more agile, and this helps you to get to market quickly.
Okay, so the coffee machine is not actually part of the software. That's just something marketing added in there to make it more interesting. But the rest of it pretty much sums up what the system is, what it does, and how it appears to the end users. And maybe before we dive into what's behind all of this and how it works and why it works and what were the challenges we run into, I have a few questions for you. How many of you are actually right now working on building some cloud-based system? Okay, and how many of you were there actually since the beginning of that system, since the first lines were written and developed it from the scratch and put it in the cloud and kept it in the cloud and keep improving it all the time? Okay, so, well, what we had is really this on-premise installation, which had a couple hundred enterprise clients, which has a couple thousands of the community installations, and we felt the need to put this or to bring it to the new level, to transform it into a service, something where we could help our customers more, provide more value for them. And we needed to do that, or we decided to do it while actually keeping running the existing on-premise installation. So we needed to do it with minimal disruption to the existing business. And that's just, you know, for the sake of bringing new level of complexity and making it more challenging, making it more fun. So really what's behind, traditionally, if you look at Magnolia, it's being described as this funnel, as the system which is in between, which sits somewhere in the middle of your infrastructure. It's able to connect to and communicate with pretty much anything you can have in the backend. There is about 150 hook points in the system where you can plug in some external functionality, from security through the data production, through the data manipulation, etc. Anything you can imagine, you can just put it in. Then system combines that together with the information that is coming from the users, from the editors, and outputs that to whichever touch point you have. Originally, 15 years ago, those were just the websites on the computers, but ever since it grew to all the different kind of mobile content, special apps in the mobile, etc., the system is pretty much able to feed and should be able to feed anything. So that's one view how you can look what Magnolia does. Another view is this one where we see actually the installation for the single client, the single environment. Typically, this is how it looks like. You get some authoring environment. In that authoring environment, you have all the data which are yet private, something which you are not ready to put out in public. It might be, I don't know, your company report for the stock market stuff which you need to protect seriously, which you need to keep private. So typically this kind of instance would be living somewhere safely tucked behind the firewall and protected with anything you can. And then you have number of public instances with some load balancers, maybe in DMZ or somewhere out there facing the public and providing and producing the content for people to consume. And of course, those things need to talk to each other. When you are ready to publish your content, you need to put it out there. And to make it more complex around it, as I said, there is number of the business users, you have the editors, you have designers, you have reviewers. For the bigger clients, there could be like multiple rounds of reviews, very complex workflows where you have maybe legal, marketing, other departments, sales looking at the documents and anything that is being published because it needs to be correct, and there is no way you can put out some information, say if you're an insurance company or bank and you publish wrong policy, that could get you in a serious trouble. So you need to be very careful there. And there is also the technical people, like the template developers who would put together all the HTML, JavaScript, all the front-end stuff. Java developers in case you have some custom integrations for the systems for which there is no integration out of the box. And of course, the bunch of people who need to keep that infrastructure running in your company, in your installation, right? So when we decided to put that on the cloud, we look at this picture and we look at it from even bigger distance and to realize that it's not just that production environment that you need. Typically, if you are a bigger company, what you also need, before you deploy anything in production, you would also require rigorous testing. So you don't have just one of those systems, you have multiple copies of it. You have the production environment, but also you have some testing environment. If you are big enough to have multiple development teams that would contribute content for your site, you also get the integration environment where you need to put work of those different systems together. So yet another complication. And if we try to dive underneath and look at the technicality of the thing, what you see is that in each of those environments, in each of those setups, we have the system, the web app, the Magnolia installation. That installation needs some database behind. It's actually the Java web app, so it needs the full Java stack to run. Typically, as I said, you have the outer public environment. They are fully separated in order to make sure that one can be protected more than the other. So you also have the multiple VMs, you have security plugged in, which is omitted from this picture and so on. And that's all that needs to be set up in order to run the environment. So just to give you a feeling for the scale of it, there is 400 distinct steps, distinct operations that need to happen in order to set up such an environment, from getting from bare metal to the installed system. And of course, if you want to be successful, there can be 0 failures in those 400 steps, right? And you need to be able to repeat it for every client. And that's not all, actually. When we decided to bring that whole thing in the cloud and to expose it for the clients to take away the burden of having to set up everything from them, we also needed some environment around it where we could orchestrate all those services, where we could make sure that all the things play together, that people can procure only as many environments as they have rights to, that everything, say, user account management works the way that you have one account for logging into the orchestration environment, into your system, into our ticketing system in case you need to report some issue, etc. All those things bound together. So there is yet another orchestration environment which looks a bit more complicated here. It's actually less complicated than the other one. I just left more details in the diagram. But what you end up in is another system which has a little bit over 200 steps to be installed. Typically, this is something providing a service for all the customers, so we don't need to install it per customer. It's something which is running just once. But internally for us, for our development team, of course, we need to be able to reproducibly run it, recreate it as many times as we need. Every time we are doing some update, every time we are changing something, we need to be able to create that environment and destroy it safely. So that's yet another 200 steps long execution guide to actually get it running, right? So where's actually challenge in all this? And that's another thing which sort of dictated the kind of solution that we can take. We had only 4 developers to put all that together. We had 6 months to take the system which was on-premise and bring it on cloud and get it all running. When we analyzed what needs to happen, all the things that are there for the users, which we need to users be able to do, there was 44 different stories, which translated in about 400 tasks. And in the methodology in which we used for actually measuring the amount of work, it was 500 story points, each of those story points being about half day of ideal work day for the developer, which in reality is actually more than half day, right? So that was really a complex task and complex thing. And somebody smart, that's actually Henry Macken, said once that for every complex problem, there is an answer which is clear and simple. And that answer is probably wrong. And that's actually also what we have seen here and what you can take away from this talk. If this is the only thing you remember, the big secret, the big thing is that you can try to simplify something which is complex. You can make a rocket out of the paper to make it simple, you turn it into the model, but it will have one fundamental flaw. It will not work. It will not do what you want it to do. It will not take you to the sky, right? Or not very high anyway. So instead what you want is you want to build it properly. You want to put all the tasks in order. You want to make everything reproducible. You want to make it as repeatable as possible, eliminate the thing, and you will design the complex solution, but you will design and you need to design the solution which is actually reproducible. So once you accept this, and actually that was one of the first obstacles which we ran into, was that, you know, even within our company, even when we were used to do everything agile and everything fast, it was tough sell for the management, for the developers themselves to accept that there is no simple solution, that there is no shortcut you can take to build that system, that you really need to bite the bullet and do it. So the simplification, that's actually, that's a big myth. It doesn't exist. You cannot simplify the complex system. You can polish it, you can hide the complexity, but you need to actually go through it and you need to do everything that is there to be done. But there was still a very good thing. So the software which we had existed for about 13 years. We were getting new and new customers every year. They were installing the things, they were going through the things. And when we tried to help them, we came up with a number of the guides, best practice manuals, SOPs, trying to help everybody to overcome the problems they found, and guide them in a way to get their systems installed. And that was actually a very nice playbook for us once we decided to automate everything, to put everything in the cloud. That was the material which was real treasure, which allowed us to go through all the things and get them. And that's actually the answer. So there is no simplification. What you can do to simplify the things for yourself, for your clients, you can automate them. And that's where we actually focus. That's what we did. Of course, if you ask developers how to automate things, what can you do? Well, the answer is they will script it, they will code it, they will put it in the code, and that's actually what we end up doing. So once we arrive at the decision, once we knew what we want to do, we look around, we took the technology which we could, and basically we started building from the lowest layer. We were coding everything with Ansible against the OpenStack to be able to procure the VMs that we needed, procure the amount of memory, the CPU, the stuff which we had to do. We started looking at those SOPs which we created before for the clients, taking each of the blocks separately and creating for ourselves Lego bricks, if you will, to put together the bigger systems, to put together the bigger scripts. And in the end, we ended up with some monster like this one, where with one single command, I can actually execute all those 400 steps and get the whole environment installed for the client. And I can run it as many times as I want, and it will succeed. But that's not all. While we started putting together those scripts, what we also realized or started to do was building a facade around those scripts to expose everything over the rest. Because truly, well, how many people, how many clients do you want to point into some environment, say, here is your SSH login, go log in, execute this script or that script, remember how many parameters you need to put in, this is the exact order maybe sometimes in which you need to put them in, etc. I don't want to do it, and I don't expect my customers to want to do it either. So what we actually did was to take all of that and build a facade around it, which allows people to, we created a number of different REST endpoints, allowing people to access all the things over the REST API with just proper credentials without having to SSH into the system. And at the same time, when we started doing that, we actually started building the last piece, which was the UI around the whole thing, UI of Magnolia Now. And you heard the similar thing in the keynote today about the marriage between the different parts or unification between the different parts, between the design and configuration, between the ops and so on. And that's basically what we did here, getting from all those Ansible playbook scripts which we had for the big fundamental task through the REST endpoints over which we exposed them, all the way up to the UI action. So if there is something you can execute in UI, there is a straightforward mapping, there is a straightforward action on the REST point which can be executed, and there is a script behind it for the Ansible playbook. Some of them, as you can see, are not actually exposed, like backing up the content. Again, just taking the thing away from the customer. Why do you need to configure or to think about how many times you want the backup run, or where are the points when you need backup to run and so on. We run the infrastructure for you, we run the system for you, we know when you are executing any critical operations with the critical endpoint, so we could very well define those points where the backup needs to happen. Same way we can also configure it on the timely manner to make sure that there is backup overnight or every couple of hours, depending on what kind of data you have. There is also a number of other things, like, for example, setting up the new clients or destroying the clients and so on. Again, that's the stuff we don't want to expose, so it's not out there, but it could be done as well. So building this straightforward pipeline from the UI action all the way down to the Ansible playbook, that was the one thing which allowed us to actually move forward. The other thing was the straightforward UI. Not only you want to have the actions which are easy to execute, you also want to organize the things in a way that people feel comfortable with your system. And that people can actually, log in, and this is what they see. So they see immediately a list of all their environments which they have. They see whether those environments are running or not. In this case, nothing is running actually. And they will also immediately get notification about what happened since the last login they came in. That's all you can hope for when you get into the system. It tells you in which state it is. It tells you what happened since you were there last time. It's same like you come home after a day of work and your kids come and tell you what happened in their day, what they did. That's exactly what the system does. It behaves like that. It tells you if there is anything you need to pay attention, or if you can just relax and take your coffee or tea or whatever else you drink. Similarly, as soon as you decide to do something in the environment, as soon as you dive into some environment, into some part of the system, again, it will present you with the straightforward list of the operations. Right now, because I was too lazy and I was logged in as the administrator, the screenshots which you see actually show you all the operations which are there possible, but based on the roles of the users. Similarly, like in any other system, we will hide the operations which users are not allowed or not entitled to execute. So if somebody is in the role of operator of the system, he would be able to invoke the manual backup, but he would not be able to, say, prepare the site release. Or similarly, if there is a marketing coordinator who can push the new release of the templates or new release of the content on the production side, he would not be able to mess up and, say, for example, tear down the whole environment, etc. So again, we are limiting the amount of operations to make sure there is no confusion, and making sure that when we organize the operations in the UI, that they go in the successful or in the logical order, one below another, to allow you to just go through one op after another, not to wonder, okay, now I was here and I need to go to the next menu and item, I don't know, 22. in order to find what to do next. So that was another thing. And that actually brings me to yet another optimization or yet another thing that we introduced in the system, which helped us a lot to keep the plan on track and deliver everything on time. And it also helped in the end the customers to work with the system, and that's limiting the choices which customer has. As I said before, the on-premise installation of Magnolia, because it was running on generic hardware, it was running on generic software, what you had was it was able to work with 10 different OSs, it was able to work on 10 different application servers, you had 7 different databases which you could use. There was, I don't know, 50, 70 different configurations that you could go for in regard of splitting your data, how you utilize the file system, how you configure cache, etc. And all those choices, they were logical, they were something which you needed to do based on the environment which you had, based on the content which you were serving, or based on the utilization which you expected for your system. What we did here was actually look at the environment in which we were deploying the system, made sure that the VMs which we procured, which we created for the system, were optimal for what we wanted to achieve, and then made at each of the decision point, at each configuration step that we had, we made a choice, single choice, which we used to produce the whole environment. So in the end, all those environments are uniform. That made it tremendously easier for us to make sure that when we procure new environment, we can also, when we make changes to how we procure the environment, that we can test it, that we can make sure that everything works, that it works for all the clients, that we can avoid any unpleasant surprises and repeatedly do this kind of operation. But did it take away something from the users? Well, it took away the pain of having to choose before they were actually using the system. So right now, if you come to Magnolia Cloud and you apply for it, that's the screen which I don't have here, but if you do, the only choice which is in front of you is, do you want to go for the cloud or not? You say yes, you get the whole environment installed, you have your login, you have everything in, and you can start using it straight away. Or you decide it's not for you and you want to have the on-premise installation, fair enough, that still works and you can still use it. But does it also mean that everybody needs to have the same needs? Of course not. What we are doing underneath is, because everything runs in our infrastructure, because we see what is running, we have the full control. We can see how you are utilizing the resources. And if you need more CPU, or if you need more disk space, or if you need the other things, we have monitors set up and we can actually look at the things which you are running out of, and we can optimize your resources. We can upscale it or downscale it as much as you need and optimize the things for you, again, with the peace of mind for you without having to worry. One thing which I already mentioned, the testing, well, that was another thing which was tremendously important and which was actually precondition for, or was allowed only by the fact that we automated everything. If we did not, as I said, the procuring environment for the client, that's 400 steps, you would not want to test that after every little change manually, right? Nobody would, nobody's sane anyway. So what we have is this whole automated environment, which I think you have seen many times before. As soon as the developers commit something, there is the automated build which will kick in. It will execute all the tests. It will try to do everything. If this succeeds, it will also take that, pull it in the staging environment where the product managers can go and validate that everything is as designed, as expected, as the feature was designed to work. And actually it doesn't stop here. So what happens next, or what we did next was to finish this whole thing with the delivery. So once the PMs are happy with the release, there is no need to go back to developers and tell them, hey, yeah, okay, it's good, you have thumbs up, you can go and release. No, why would we do that? Since everything is already building automatically, well, it was just, logical conclusion, logical next step, which took actually very, very little effort to give access to the PMs to this one button which says release, promote this code from the staging into the production environment and deploy it immediately to all the clients using that service. Should something go wrong? Well, again, you've seen it before. We make a promise of giving the platform, but of course something can go wrong, something can break. With this setup, we can push the fix for whatever breaks very quickly. And if that's not enough, what we can also do is, because everything is built automatically, because we have previous releases, we can just also simply roll back and get to the previous version of the release, which gives peace of mind also to people operating this whole thing, making sure that when they deploy a new thing, it's running. If it's not running, okay, I just go back, I roll back, and then only analyze what actually happened and why it didn't work. And with that goes another thing. So once we release the new version of the platform, we have also a simple bot which is monitoring the things for us, which is looking at all the triggers, at all the things which are there to be monitored. And in case there is some problem, in case there is some issue, either in the integration, in the staging, or after the production, it will notify people. It will notify everybody in the chat room, which we have specially for this, and allow people to actually discuss the solution to the problems there. So in summary, what we did is actually we took the OpenStack as the base for whatever we did. We scripted everything with Ansible, and using the Spring Boot, to power the REST facade, we expose all the services. We made those services accessible to the users through the React.js, and integrated all the other things, other tools which we had and which we were using before into the environment. If you look at it differently, here you see what Magnolia was able to do before and what it's able to do now with the Magnolia Now platform. So in reality, instead of changing the big picture, what we did was we actually took a step back, we look at even bigger picture, and we built something around the system which now allows us to go safely in and start changing the things inside and bringing that to even more smaller compartmentalized services and providing the extra value for the customers faster and faster. If you are wondering about how the teams operate, here is the quick sketch what's happening. So internally, we have the product management department where the product managers are looking at the market, at interviewing customers, interviewing partners, and everybody looking at how to, what is actually the need in the market, what is it that is currently the biggest pain for the customers. That's also how we came to the idea of looking at the things around, and how we decided that to automate all the deployment and all the installation and running everything as a service for the customers was what was most needed at the moment. Then, of course, we have the developers who put the things together, validation again by the product managers, and then putting everything live in operation. So, and while we did that, actually, there was one extra side effect, one extra added benefit which came almost for free, which we did, and that was that we built the continuous delivery pipeline also for all the clients. So anybody who signs up for this environment, before, if they wanted, well, of course, internally they could build the continuous delivery pipeline, but it was difficult to get all the pieces together. But what we did here now, as I was saying, since all the operations in the UI, all the promotion of the side of the changes in the templates going up, and possibility to replicate everything from the production into the test environments, all those things is actually exposed over the REST API. So if you want, you can actually go and you can plug in your continuous integration system to call those REST APIs. As soon as you have your code in, you are able to deploy and to actually operate with Magnolia without having to, reinstall the things, without having to wonder whether you have backup or not. Then you can have your business users to validate everything. If they are happy, you can just continue promoting that to the production environment or wait there. So in the end, what you get as a client, you get the automated deployment. We also push the new releases of the Magnolia Core, new releases of the CMS in there. You can choose to and verify them and before they are pushed into production. You get the continuous integration for free. You get the real world validation where you can replicate not only examples of the content from your production, but really everything that you have in production, all the content, you can get it in your UAT environment where you can make sure that everything works as expected before you actually push the new release together. Similarly, as I was explaining just now, you get the seamless delivery of all that content, you get automated backups. With that, you get also disaster recovery, where on the fly, we are able to assemble the code which you have in your Git repository that is plugged into the system with Magnolia Release and with your backup of your data to rebuild your system in case something happens. And of course, because of that, you can also achieve rather easily, the high availability for the things. So in conclusion, the complex thing, the complex environment, complex tasks which are behind, they stay complex. There is no way you can actually change it. You can make it simpler, but you can make people see it simple. If you remember that short video from the beginning, it looked like a very simple thing, right? You would not guess that on the click of the button, there is 100 operations which are being invoked behind the scene. And that's the best thing that you can do. You can project simplicity to your users and make them feel very comfortable with the system, not wondering about the complexity that is behind the thing. So, I don't very often cite this person, but I think this thing he got really right. So I would love to advise you all to look at whatever you can, whatever you have inside, and automate the heck out of it. But perhaps before you do so, what you actually want to do is to look at what it is you want to automate. And make sure that before you dive into automating the stuff, you actually are doing the right thing, and it will be helpful for you rather than detrimental. And with that, thank you very much.